what I started realizing, Brad, is you have to hire people that calm you down.
Sure.
That work with you, not raise your blood pressure. You need people that lower your blood pressure. And that's huge. And I didn't realize that. I just thought you had to deal with that.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I started realizing who's in there now. And they calm me.
Okay.
Again, I don't know where you're at with being high strung a little bit. Sometimes, I'm at a 10 when I need to be at a 2.
Right.
For being a little high strung, but it's just, I'm a visionary, right? And then when stuff doesn't start to go right, I get very, I don't know, I'm like, why didn't that happen?
Hey guys, welcome back to the Probate House Guy Podcast. I'm Brad Woodall, the Probate House Guy. Today we're continuing our series of having real estate investors on the show. And today I've got a buddy of mine, James Kolde from Minnesota, on the show today. So James, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So why don't you give us a little bit of rundown on your background, how you got into real estate, what you did before real estate, all that stuff.
My background is, I was pretty much a laborer. I was a firefighter. I've been around the world. I've been to Iraq. I've been to Afghanistan, Wake Island. I fell into real estate. My business partner lived next door to another buddy of mine, and we played boot hockey. And for those of you who don't know what boot hockey is, when you grow up in Minnesota or Canada, they're given a hockey stick at birth.
Yes.
And they tell you, go out and play and be one with the hockey gods. No, so my neighbor, he has a hockey rink, and the guys would go down there and on Wednesdays and Sundays and play boot hockey.
Okay.
So boot hockey comes back from back in the day when you got dropped off at the ice rink outside. You didn't care if it was bad ice or good ice. You were just happy to be out there. So if it was bad ice, you just put your boots on and you still played and ran on the ice. So that's what a lot of us guys always remember. So we act like we're 12 years old, but we were able to drink. We put our beer in the snowbank, and we run up and down the ice, and we played boot hockey. Well, Jaden happened to be the neighbor, and he was telling me that he had some properties that he wanted to, that he's been flipping. I go, let me help you out. I'm a firefighter right now. I work 10 days a month. That leaves a lot of time to do whatever I want to do.
Yes. And
so he's like, all right. So he tried it out. He's like, you're the best contractor I've ever had. So he gave me another one. And then we did another one. And then he's like, all right. So we went down to the bar. Now, and he's like, I think we should start a business. I'm like, I think we should start a business too. And he's like, what do you want to start? I go, let's flip houses. He's like, all right, let's do it. So we wrote on a napkin a business plan. We were going to do 30 houses in a year. We did that within 3 months to 6 months. We had 30 houses in the hopper.
Wow.
Here was our problem that we did when we first started is we didn't know how to wholesale. We only knew how to buy, and we also knew I knew how to rehab. Right? I mean, I could do it. The problem was I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do it myself anymore. So actually, Jaden, he actually had to help me get out of that mindset of being the laborer and being the boss. I could be a laborer boss. I'm the guy that jumps in and helps people, but I couldn't even do that. I literally had to just set the tone and, started hiring GCs and different things. And it just it just exploded. We were just talking about this the other day, Brad. If I didn't do this, I literally burned the boats when we started this. I gave up my career completely. My wife gave up her career completely, and we jumped in completely with no backup plan. My whole life, I've always had a backup plan to a backup plan to a backup plan. And I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
Okay. What I found and what I really want to start preaching is sometimes you cannot have a backup plan because then you default to that backup plan, right?
Right.
And then you let the first plan fail. And that's why once we burned the boats and we knew we didn't have any other plan, now we're almost 9 years into this.
Yep.
And we're going, holy crap, if we didn't burn the boats. I remember my father-in-law putting his, looking at us like, what the hell are you guys going to do? Do you guys know anything about real estate? Nope. We just went, you know what? We're going to figure it out. And that's exactly what we did. 2 years later, we're down in in Florida, and we're at the condo, and he's got his arm around me. He's like, "Sure glad you quit your job."
More time here in Florida.
Right. So, I mean, that's kind of the quick nuts, in a nutshell, of how I became into this business. And now so our biggest thing that we're doing is we're doing business in a box. So we have, the Knoxville Home Guys.
Okay.
They reached out and, they wanted some coaching.
Okay.
He saw me on, Mike, podcast.
Okay. Yeah.
Here's the funny part. He never even watched it. Mike just put on the bottom, firefighter does 150 to 200 deals a year.
Never watched it.
He never watched it, but he's a firefighter. So he's like, he found a way to reach out to me.
Right.
And then it just kind of, we started talking more about this time last year. And I said, hey, we've had this vision of taking home guys. That's the reason we came up with the name, right? Minnesota Home Guys.
Right.
We actually have Wisconsin Home Guys,
Okay.
Florida Home Guys.
Okay.
And we also have, Knoxville is the first licensee.
Okay.
And then we're working on San Antonio right now. Right now, it's all organic.
Right.
We're putting SOPs together for us to continue to broadcast it out, advertise it. A lot of the stuff is just happening organically. And
yeah.
That's what we want. And the reason why we did the business in a box is, no, you do nationwide, don't you?
Yeah, well, my probate resource brand is nationwide. Yeah, but I still have my kind of business here in Georgia that I've always had for years, our review. We still do deals and that, but yeah.
So one of the things that we noticed when I went down to Florida is when you're dealing with the East Coast versus a Midwesterner, you have to talk different.
You're right.
You have to have grit, right? Yep. You're talking a guy from Jersey, you're from New York, somewhere up in there. You almost have to call him a dumbass, and he accepts it. They don't get mad when people swear when you're on the East Coast, right? Hey, you're being a dumbass seller, and you're like, yeah, I probably am, but that's the way it is, But again, what I found out is I tried to do the Midwestern way when I'm down in Florida to these New Yorkers, and I just got eaten up.
You're right. Yep.
So I go, most of the franchises, they have to do it one way, and that's the only way to do it, right?
Right. So
I go, I don't want a franchise, first of all, because you got to, it's a lot harder to pay attention to everybody. You got colors all the time. This is the way you have to do everything. Right. I don't want control over that. Yep. I go, I just want control over the name, and I want control over, don't tarnish the name. Because when you're in the Midwest, you have to do Midwestern things. You have to know your market. And I've been trying to explain this to a lot of people before everything even went, doing the nationwide wholesaling, because again, you had these guys that were in California, they're trying to call Nebraska, and I've talked to several people at meetups. Yeah, they're trying the hard push, and you're not going to get that if in the Midwest. No, if you try the hard push, right? You get that more on the East Coast and maybe in the southern states.
South and Midwest personalities are very similar. Yeah, but I would say people from the South are a little bit more passive aggressive than people in the Midwest. So it's just the personalities, but they're very much similar. Because my parents lived in Chicago for a little while, outside of Chicago, right in the Midwest, and they got to experience going from the South going up to the Midwest, and they're like, "Oh, you guys talk funny." My family, we don't have super Southern accents.
You don't, Brad. I would not know that you were from the South.
Right. Now, my mom, it was a military brat. My grandfather was in the Marine Corps, and so she moved around mostly on the eastern seaboard. But my dad is originally from Alabama and Georgia. But if you talk to my dad, he doesn't have a now his dad has a real strong accent, but my dad does not.
Hey, Brad, you are looking at the most southernest, northernest boy you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
I'm not lying. I might talk northern, right? But my whole family, Mobile, Alabama.
There you go. Yeah.
So I know how to peel shrimp, eat crawdads. I know how to eat greens, black-eyed peas, sweet tea. Yeah. Chicken fries. I mean, you name it.
Right.
I know it. I'm the only guy up north that still eats grits.
Yeah. Well, what is that?
Well, you go to Cracker Barrel, right? And down in the South, they automatically bring them to you.
Sure.
In the North, you have to tell them to bring them to you.
Right. And they have to get somebody in the kitchen who knows how to make them.
Right. Obviously, we got off track here, but that's that's kind of the in a nutshell. That's where we were at. We went from Jada and I had a desk and we stared at each other for 6 months, and Jen was in another little room where she answered the phones. Mm-hmm. It took us 6 months to get out of that to about 1,300 square feet.
Yeah.
And then we moved from 1,300 square feet to 3 years later to where we're at now. We've been there for 3 years. So it's about 3,000 square feet.
Okay. Wow. It's pretty sizable.
And then actually we're in the process of moving.
Okay.
We're actually, I got to meet an inspector today, a little bit closer to where we live.
Okay.
We're actually buying if it all goes well, it's an old movie theater.
Oh, cool.
On Main Street in small town USA. So
nice.
We thought that, now we can maybe be the local guy around here, but we still need an office to go to, and we're going to use the marquee sign.
Yeah.
That's grandfathered in.
Nice. Yes.
So we can put messages up there, obviously have our brand up there too. So yeah, we're excited about, not everybody knows this. I don't know when this broadcasts, but
yeah, a couple weeks.
Yeah, so, we're good then. We're good.
You guys have started from the bottom, shrunk, like, it's taken you time to kind of figure out what you want your business to look like. So why don't you kind of elaborate on maybe some of the thought process that went into that, and maybe some of the seasons of your business that led to decisions you made versus that didn't?
Well, so when we first started the business, our whole goal was to, how do we maybe make a business that's sellable?
Right.
Okay.
Sure.
And one of the biggest things that we were told is make sure your books are good, because you can't sell a business if your books are goofy.
Right.
And I know some people try to play with the books. You can't play with the numbers, right? I mean, the numbers are the numbers.
Yep.
So that was the number one thing that we did, is always make sure you have really good books. So we played off of that when we decided that, hey, our goal is to grow this business up. We seeded this company with 200 to 250 in the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And then, we just continued to dump back into the business to grow it. Right.
Right.
And then our goal was to hire a COO and have him run the business, and Jada and I sit back and collect all the money.
Right.
Well, it started looking really well, how everything was going to play out. And then the problem is in this business, we all know that everything changes.
Yes.
At least recently, it's been changing. The plan that you make in November here for your next year, come March, you're going to have to change it again.
Sure.
I mean, that's just what happens, especially lately, right? How long you been in the business?
I started ArborView in 2016. Kind of started dabbling and doing deals in 2015.
So, I mean, you got a little bit more time on me. With all of that, but you've seen how things, sometimes you think they're going to stay one way, and then all of a sudden they change. And so in this business, you have to know how to pivot at any given time. So if you say you're going to flip so many houses, and you don't hit that, that's what was a downfall. That's what started the downfall.
Okay.
With why we got out of that, having a COO as the main guy.
Right.
Because we lost on 18 deals.
Oh gosh,
we had the company in the very beginning. We probably lost 5 to 6 deals.
Okay.
Last year, that was one of the reasons why we decided that it was time to, change our focus and do something different. Because here's what happens. When you buy a property, even if it's 2 months from now, right? And you know you're going to buy it. Right. So let's say you're going to buy something in November. You have a plan right now. But as soon as you get up to November, you have to see, is that plan exactly going to stay the same? Or am I going to change that plan?
Yep.
Right. And we continued to stay that plan when you need to change that plan. You always need to pivot. And I'll give you a quick example right now. We just bought a property we were going to flip, and it was going to cost us we had projected that we were going to make, 90 on it. Mm-hmm. We ended up wholesaling and made 85.
Yep.
And it's done.
Right.
Instead of us waiting, because what ended up happening, I said, since we're buying it, let's dangle the carrot out there. maybe somebody wants to live in that neighborhood and wants to be an end user. They're going to pay more. That's
Correct.
exactly what ended up happening.
Wholetailing.
Well, right. And we didn't even, I say wholetailing is when you put it actually on the market.
Sure.
This one, we didn't have to. We have such a huge buyers list now.
Yes.
In Minnesota. We have about a 90%, 95% dispo. I'll get it every proper. We don't try to take something down and if it's not real.
Right.
And the other thing, Brett, we're not going for the $3,000 to $5,000 BS stuff.
No,
sorry.
You can't. You can't.
You can't focus on that stuff.
Because the $3,000 to $5,000 will turn into either having to terminate the deal, and then that tarnishes your reputation with sellers when they see that you're messing around, and that may turn into no money at all because all of a sudden last minute you've got to essentially assign this property to your buyer for nothing, and you did all this work to make nothing.
Right.
So
one of the values that we have in our business is do the right thing and the money will follow.
Me too. That's how I run my business too.
That's exactly how we do it. Do the right thing, the money will follow. And I told everybody, I go, we're going to get those ones that, hey, we have a $15,000, $20,000. We know we're going to get 15, 20, right? Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden it hits closing. We realize that they're not going to take away anything. We have to now give away some of our profit, and we might be the only one walking away with $5,000. They don't walk away with anything. But now, you know what? We solved their problem.
Yep.
They now can walk away. Those are okay, in my opinion, because again, you don't know it until the very end.
Sure.
Typically, and you're still helping somebody out.
Right.
I mean, it's just the bottom line is you're still helping that person. So what I always like to tell people is we're a full solution real estate company. So back to, you were asking me how we've probably always added people. So initially it was just Jaden and I, Jen, who now is the acting COO with Paul. She was our first hire.
Okay.
And I remember that Jaden's like, why should we hire this person? I go, look, Jen knows how to run an office. We suck at paperwork.
Right.
He's like, okay, I'm sold. So it was an hour away from him calling my wife and saying, hey, I'm going to offer her the job. He calls me up and goes, dude, we can't hire your wife. I'm like, what do you mean? What if we have to fire her? What do you mean? Of course, then we have to fire her, dude. It still has to work out. She's not going to go, no, I'm not going to leave.
Right.
So he finally went, okay. And then, so now we have three of us.
Yep.
And then we hired our neighbor across the street. We literally started hiring neighbors because we were growing so fast.
Right.
At one time, there was 8 people in our neighborhood that worked for me.
Wow. That's wild. And then you have to fire him. You got to live next to the guy.
You know what? I actually had to get rid of one of my really good buddies. But he always knew that. And then 2 weeks later, after I let him go, I gave him, I helped set up his 50th birthday party.
Okay.
But he always knew, you know what? And I always have this thing. I go, there's fun James and there's work James.
Right.
Your goal is to always have fun James there. But when I have to put my hat on and not, I don't even want to say be a dick, because I'm really not. I'm very, admit to your mistakes.
Yep.
Because you cannot argue anymore if you admit to your mistakes. And I will admire you 10 times more when you say, hey, I screwed up, but I learned from it and I'm going to move on.
Right.
That's all I want people to do. Hey, what'd you learn? All right, we're not going to do that again, right? Yep. Okay. And you keep moving forward.
That's great.
It doesn't have to be that deep, right?
No. I mean, it's you figure out what works best for you, and you got to know your people too.
Right.
Like you have to understand their personalities. You have to understand how they tick, and you got to figure out ways to motivate them or nudge them when they need to be nudged, and then also teach them to admit when, okay, this isn't working out. Sometimes you got to have those come to Jesus meetings with your people. It's happened to me. Some of my team people have been with me for years, and because of life happens to everybody, right? And sometimes you got to be like, hey, I remember having one conversation. I said, this is the last time we're going to talk about this. you know what you need to do. You know exactly what's expected of you, what you need to do. Here's your stats. You're not doing that. I don't know what the problem is. You know what the problem is. Help me help you. And then the next week it was like, boom, they're back at it, like back on. It was just like, just acknowledging that, okay, I'm paying attention and, let's figure this out. Right.
Right.
Giving them the benefit of the doubt. Now, if they're just habitually like over and over again, then done, this ain't working. So, yeah.
So now we're in our second building. We have, I think at that time we got 8 or 9, and then we were probably all the way up to about 18 people. Wow. But not everybody out of the office. So, so
okay.
COVID started hitting, then you started having VAs.
Sure.
Right now, I want to say we got 12.
12
back
people.
Back down to 12, and that's with VAs too.
Yeah.
I guess I could probably do the count really quick, but yeah, it's and it sounds, we're basically, you have drama, you're not getting hired.
Right.
So anybody that even has a little bit of hint of drama, I'm going to be the wild card because it's my business. I'm the one that, what I started realizing, Brad, is you have to hire people that calm you down.
Sure.
That work with you, not raise your blood pressure. You need people that lower your blood pressure. And that's huge. And I didn't realize that. I just thought you had to deal with that.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I started realizing who's in there now. And they calm me.
Okay.
Again, I don't know where you're at with how being high strung a little bit. Sometimes, I'm at a 10 when I need to be at a 2.
Right.
For being a little high strung, but it's just, I'm a visionary, right? And then when stuff doesn't start to go right, I get very, I don't know, I'm like, why didn't that happen?
Right.
And let's talk about it and figure it out. But
yeah, so you figured out kind of your team, and how did you, I guess over time as you shrunk or grew the team, how did you evaluate that and come to these crossroads of like, okay, this isn't working, or this is working, or we need this person, or we don't need this person? Were there turning points where you were like, hey, wait a second,
a lot of times when we figure if we need somebody or if we don't need somebody is when we take over their spot for a week or two. Mm-hmm. And then I'm sure, I know you've done this, where you fill in and you're like, why weren't they telling me about this? Mm-hmm. Like, this is the information I wanted them to tell us.
Right.
And they weren't telling us,
right.
It's like, maybe they just didn't get it.
Right.
And that's what we figured out with like our leads. It's like, they just wanted to pick up the phone, take a point, and then put it back down. Right. It's like, no, there's still, you got to baby it a little bit. You have to coach people. We didn't, we're trying to get that feedback. We're trying to get feedback like, what kind of people are calling? Well, I don't know if you've been having an uptick on MLS leads. You know what? We probably have more. We probably have more because of the TV. Mm-hmm. Would be my guess. People have their property out there for 2 weeks. They say it's not selling. They're like, "Hey, it's 500,000. I'll give you. If you give me 480, I'll walk away right now." I'm like, "Dude, that's really tempting, but
you're gonna pass. You're gonna net less than that with your realtor if it sells for 500.
Right. That's it.
Yeah, when the market shifted 2 years ago, we did see a big uptick in listings because all of a sudden people were used to like their house selling in less than 24 hours to then taking longer than that. And all of a sudden people were like, my house isn't selling. It's like, just be patient. It'll sell, So.
Right. We're back to the before where houses didn't sell in 5 days, they still take 30 to 45 days to move.
Right. Yeah, average days on market here in Atlanta is around a month now. I got to double check the stats, but it's around 30-something days now, average days on market versus back, after COVID, it was like 5.
Negative 5 days on market?
Yeah.
How is it sold?
Yeah, it was crazy. And as investors, we have to also understand that expectation too, because from a cash flow perspective, and when you're doing a flip, that's longer hold time. Less, your cash conversion cycle has lengthened over, then you have to change your business, and you've pivoted. You mentioned that wholesale deal. I'm actually closing one on Monday. It was the same situation. I bought it to wholesale and retail it. If I flipped it, I was projecting about a $65,000 net profit. And I reached out to a buddy of mine. This was like kind of on the east side of Atlanta. I reached out to a buddy of mine who's over there, and I said, hey, do you know anybody like looking, not another investor, but like somebody who's looking for, a house because I don't, from a flipper, the money's not there, but do you know anybody? And he said, let me call around. And he called somebody, and a friend of his called. And basically this guy's kind of a dabbler investor, right? He was looking for this as just a rental property. He was getting a conventional investor mortgage on it or whatever. He's buying it from me I bought the house for $187,000. It was a hoarder house. I spent about $6,000 to clean it out. And then he came and looked at it right after that. He's buying it from me for $250,000. So I'm going to net with my interest carry and the clean out costs. I'll net right around $50,000 versus $65,000 if I had flipped it, but I'm not going to get that money for 3 or 4 months. Right. I've owned the house for 2 weeks now.
Yep. So we have cycles here in Minnesota. Now I know you guys do too a little bit, but probably not as prominent. Right. This is something that I was fighting with a lot of people in the very beginning when I came in, because we shut down. Once we hit Thanksgiving, we shut down because we're a cold state. Right. Again, people just figure we're going to hunker down and we're going to wait till spring. In the springtime, we know the difference between nice days and not so nice days just by how the phone rings, not by looking outside. Because people are like, want to get the heck out of Dodge. And so I talked to, was it Dylan out of Detroit?
Uh-huh.
And then there's another guy that I know that wholesales out of there. His name is TJ.
Uh-huh.
You know TJ out of there?
I don't know TJ.
And I started bringing that up. He goes, of course, we have probably the same weather you do. And I go, so it'll die off in December.
Yeah.
So we do a lot lighter advertising in December. Mm-hmm. And then we start about the middle of January is when everything starts back up again. So there's really a period of time. We know if we buy a house in late December, we're getting a hell of a deal on it.
Sure. Yeah.
Because they had to sell. Yep. That's why I always try to tell people, if they're trying to buy a house for their very first time, buy it in November and December.
Right.
Because those are the people that don't want to move, that have to move, that you can get a good deal on.
Yep, exactly. We have similar. So our market in Atlanta slows down in Thanksgiving, from Thanksgiving till about, I would say, the second week in February.
Okay.
Towards the end of February, it starts to pick back up. But it slows down, but we still do deals and we still buy deals and sell deals. But definitely the lead volume slows down around Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we're setting it up for more of for spring. So we'll start talking to people in January and February, and then we're buying their house in March and April.
Right. Yeah.
So you just start that whole process and, you're vetting all the way through and stuff. So
what does your mix look like in terms of what you guys flip, wholesale? What are your disposition strategies that you guys do? Because you're a full service. I mean, you're
that's a very good question. So last year we did roughly 80 flips.
Okay.
And we did roughly 100, 120 wholesale deals.
Okay.
And then we're all licensed too. So we're actually in the process of grooming our brokerage.
Okay.
So we're going to have a brokerage too, because what we're finding out is when you have more control over your business that way, when you're doing it versus somebody else, it just seems to work a lot better.
Yes. Now, I've heard from a lot of people that a brokerage is not really a big money-making thing, but it's another way to dispo your leads that kind of helps supplement the cost per deal at the end of the day.
And that was my whole goal is, okay, let's just do a quick example. If our goal is to get a deal, mm-hmm. and if that deal is a cash deal, if that deal is, we actually call it a 14-day.
Mm-hmm.
So we're saying we're wholesaling your property and you can get more. And so we're going left to right. Left is the cash deal. That's super easy.
Right.
Let's write it up now and be done. As you continue to move right, it gets a little bit more of pain. Mm-hmm. And that's where you start to find out where people are at with their motivation of selling.
Okay.
And so the last one being putting it on the MLS. And Brad, we will tell everybody, you're going to make more money if you put this on the MLS.
Oh, we do too. We tell everyone that. Mm-hmm.
You know what I get more mad about? And I really want to start pushing this. You know how they always talk about realtors doing the right thing?
I've met so many crooked realtors in this business.
Okay. Yeah, you're correct. But let's just go back to like, hey, realtors, when you have a sweet old lady, you know,
yeah,
and you'll understand what I'm saying here as I continue. So how many times do you go out to a house and somebody says you can't list, or I had my realtor out here and they says I can't list this. I'm like, what do you mean you can't list it? Well, he says that I got to fix this, and this, and then I can list it. I go, that realtor is actually doing you a disservice. You can list anything on the MLS. What they're not telling you is their brokerage does not take in as-is homes.
Right.
And they don't want an image to put out there that they sell these as-is homes. So now they're forcing you to fix it up, which you don't have the money, and they're not even listening to you.
Yep.
They have to listen to your seller.
Right.
You know, you just don't go in there and go, all right, let me list it for you. No, find out what the heck they want.
And don't assume money is not always the motivating factor. Like sometimes people, due to other circumstances in life, don't care about the money, especially doing probate deals. We find that more often than not. Is the family's inherited this property and they just want this property off their hands. They don't want to mess with it. They don't want to fix it up. It's too far away, whatever. They just want to sell it and they want to get some money for the estate. And that's that. And a lot of realtors always, because you read in some of the Facebook groups, these realtors always assume that, well, you're leaving money on the table. And I say, well, guess what? Everyone's bought and sold a car at some point in their life. When you go to the car dealership and you trade in your car, you are not getting market value for that car. The dealership is going to maybe fix a couple things or not fix anything at all, and they're going to resell it immediately for more money than they bought it from you for. Right. And everyone knows that. They know that you're not going to. You can go sell it on Facebook Marketplace and deal with all the idiots and whatever and get more money, but some people don't want to mess with that. That's why they go to the dealership. It's the easy button. They can trade in their car and drive away in their brand new car today. Right? We're doing the same thing in most cases as investors. I got to make a profit and I'm solving your problem, and your realtor cannot guarantee you that your house will be sold in 2 weeks.
Right.
Like they're going to put it on the market and hope that they find a buyer, and maybe they will, maybe they won't, but they can't make you a guarantee that your home is going to be sold in the next 2 weeks. Versus when we make a cash offer to a seller, it's like, especially at least we do, because I've terminated 7 contracts in the last 8.5 years. That's it. 7, right? Out of hundreds of deals, 7. So I can make an offer to a seller and say, we're going to buy your house for what we said. And I do 0 due diligence offers all the time to sellers where I won't have any due diligence to show them that I'm in this. This is me. I'm on it. So I'm sure you guys do similar things where you're like, hey, this is the guarantee. This is, you can get a little bit more this way, or you can get a little bit more that way. Sounds like
that's exactly what we do. And then we have to debunk all the other stuff, the nationwide so-called buyers. You know, they give one price, but then they, you know, all of a sudden when you're all done, you end up being the exact same price that we had.
Yes.
You know, and that kind of goes into, again, you have a realtor knock on your door. I could sell your house for $1 million. And you're like, you don't know any better. Really? The last guy in here says he can only sell it for 150. I'm going to go with you. Well, they're buying the listing.
Right.
So then I got to go through that whole spiel of like, okay, now you're going to cancel. You're going to cancel. You're going to cancel. I go, of course, they're just telling you what you want to hear so you're going to sign the dotted line.
Right.
And now you're going to be stuck with them for 6 months.
Right. And the funny part is like realtors don't even make money till it sells anyway. So I don't even understand why a lot of them waste their time doing that, because if it doesn't ultimately sell, they don't make a penny anyway. So they just wasted their time too.
You're right. But I think they're thinking that they're going to continue to lower it.
Right. And hopefully it sells.
Right.
Right.
I mean, it's just like.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You have to listen to your seller and understand what their needs are, what their real needs are, and provide a solution to those needs. And sometimes that's not your cash offer. Sometimes that's a listing.
Yep.
Right? Yep. Depends.
And that's where, again, we, on listings, we probably do, we could have done more last year, but we also didn't want to push the listings as much.
Correct.
Because we didn't want the salesperson to like, hey, I can get more money if I do listing versus a cash offer. Part of that is you have to trust your guys. I had one guy do that and he was done. I fired him.
Right.
You know, also the same guy who tried to go rogue and do a mutiny against the company, saying Jada and I were making too much. Oh no, I'm serious. That literally happened. That's a whole nother story. You know, I literally had to sit there in front of them and like, I'm literally in the trenches with each and every one of you. You guys don't understand how to run a business. So guess what? 4 of them all left. None of them are in the business anymore.
Right.
Because they thought they could do it better than us.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This business is not easy at all.
All the big guys say it's easy, Brad. That's not the part I hate. I know that. You know.
Right.
You know, I know that.
Yeah.
But that's what I don't like. Because, you know, a lot of these big national guys are like, it's super easy. No, I get it. They're trying to sell stuff.
Sure.
You know, they're trying to sell subscriptions to whatever, you know, just not everybody can do this. I don't know if you've ever tried to help anybody out, try to get into the business. And I've tried to help many people. And it's like, you know, you're going to get to a certain spot. They're either going to continue to excel or they just go, I'm not going to do this. This is not as easy as, you know, I'm going to say it. Pace says it is.
Oh, yeah. Don't get me started. I know Pace. We met. Pace has been messed fun with her. Like, he's a good dude, but like the amount of subject to stuff that happens and the shenanigans and the offers that we get that are subject to, and the way that they're presenting this to the sellers. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is going to result in like a class action lawsuit one day or something. Oh,
I see that too. 100%. In fact, we will only do subject twos if we're buying it now. We're not even, we don't even want to be in the middle because we figure that could still come back and bite us.
Correct. I did one like that. It was a disaster.
If we're just one in the end and we can just buy it out, if it comes down to that, we'll just do that.
Yeah. I don't like long-term I'll do short-term sub twos for a flip because I know I'll be selling it in a few months anyways. And even if it gets called due, you know, if we got time, right? We actually made an offer to a guy the other day because he was trying to get a little bit more for the house. And I said, well, look, I'm going to pay 10 grand to my private lender on this deal, you know, if I buy from you cash. So why don't I just pay you the 10 grand? I'll give you another 10 grand for it. We'll keep your mortgage in place. We'll do this for 6 months or whatever. And then you're getting paid the rest of your money in 6 months. And, you know, we pitched it to him that way. And he's like, oh, that sounds good. But then he had to like tell us it was really his mom's house. And he's like, I need to figure out how to tell my mom how that works. He's like, it makes perfect sense to me. It sounds great. Awesome. Let's do it. But she's got to agree to it because it's really her house, you know? So.
Right. And that's where we have issues, you know, of like making sure that we're explaining it to somebody who maybe if they don't even understand, I don't like doing that. I don't like trying to do, I don't want to say shady shit, but sometimes it looks that way. And my goal is to make sure that everybody's doing it, at least in Minnesota, they're doing wholesaling the correct way.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I try to educate so many wholesalers that call us. And then you got the whole topic of novations now, which is the latest buzzword in the industry. Right. And I get people calling me and they're like, oh, we'll do this. And I was like, you'd understand that that's literally a glorified net listing. And they're like, no, it's not. It's a novation. It's like, no, it is a net listing. Like, literally, that's what it is. You can't, if it quacks like a duck and looks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's a duck. That's what that is. And they're like, no, but it's this. We actually don't do novations, but we do offer, because I'm an agent and I'm about to get my broker's license to just become a broker, just to cut out, you know, the middleman or whatever.
Yep. Makes it
and
easier.
Just to make it easier, just less paperwork and all that stuff. And so we pitch, essentially, we'll list it for you, but you're going to pay us X amount in commission. If they agree to the commission and we're on agreement, it doesn't matter, you know, whether I'm charging 6 or 10. I've charged 10% commission on a deal before, but I told the seller, I said, this very complicated situation. I've got to do all these things. It's not worth my time to go through all this unless I get paid X. If you're willing to pay me X, then I'll do the deal. Now, you could go hire another realtor and do it like, you know, go this way and pay less money, but I can solve your problem today and I know how to do it, but you got to pay me X. And I know my minimum amount of number and that's what I need to make. So we're kind of pitching novations in that sense, is like, We'll list it for you, find you a buyer, but you're going to pay us X amount in commission, period.
So what we'll do is we used to call it a fix and flip. So, fix and list.
Okay.
And so, hey, if I'm going to put this much money into your house, like say this carpet, and I know that back bedroom needed carpet because you put the dog in there, the dog, scratched it all up and tried to get out, and you fix a couple things, kind of again like novation, but I'll say I'm charging you 8% now. Because you still have to pay back whatever I bought it for, but now we have a different percentage because if I'm going to give you something on the front side, this is what I'm going to get on the back side.
Right.
So that's how I'll do it. So what we've decided in here is we're not going to call it novation. We're just going to call it, hey, we can buy your property, maybe kind of a contract for deed. Do you guys, you understand contract for deed?
Yeah, I do contract for deeds.
Yeah. So I know Texas, you can't do them.
Yep.
So what we would do is like, hey, we'll give you 150. We need to make the first 25. After that, I have to make 25. If we all of a sudden make 10 over that, we split it. So basically, if I was going to go in front of a judge, I could then explain, hey, I needed to make this for my business, but I also told them if we make this much more, they're going to get more also.
Right. You're trying.
It's just another way of like sharing the risk, right? You're kind of sharing the risk and you're also sharing the reward.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember I did that on a house, one of the very first ones we ever bought. I told her I could only give her $220,000, but if I sold it for more than $320,000, I could give her another $20,000. And so we could have kept it at like $319,000 and never give her the money. We sold the house for $340,000. I walked back into her restaurant and gave her a $20,000 check, and she cried in front of me.
There you go. You just did what you said. Imagine that. You just acted with integrity, and you did what you said you were going to do, and you weren't trying to be dishonest. And you mentioned earlier, my core values in my company is the same way mine says. We never let a dollar get in the way of doing the right thing, right? It's essentially the same thing you guys do. Right? So, yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, hey, James, we've kind of run out of time today. I know you got stuff to do, and I really appreciate you coming on today. Thanks for sharing your vast knowledge of what you've learned and how you've grown and built a business over the years. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, maybe they're interested in becoming a house guy, how would they get a hold of you?
You can, James at homeguysmn.com.
Okay.
I'm on TikTok as Home Guys. I think it's Home Guys USA.
Home Guys USA. Okay.
Yep. And so that's basically we're pushing the brand
right
everywhere else.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, you can even post in there. You can even leave my number. Or maybe I don't leave my number. I don't know how. What do you typically do on that?
We'll just do an email. Just put an email address is the easiest way. People get a little creepy sometimes with phone numbers.
Yeah, right. I guess I really don't want anybody calling me out of the blue unless I know who's actually calling me. But yeah, I'd love to sit down and talk to anybody. Maybe they want to get into this business, and we have a business in a box. We have 3 different programs depending on how much knowledge you already have.
Okay.
So we've had people reach out that don't have a lot of knowledge, and we can set them up that way, or somebody just wants to get back in the business, and they just need the right tools and the guidance to, instead of them going out to try to find what works, we already know what works.
Right.
Well, that's kind of what you get. So Brad, thanks again so much for having me on. Really do appreciate it. I'll have to return the favor and get you on ours.
I'd love to.
Yeah, go ahead and end it. And then I got to talk to you really quick.
Sure. Awesome. Well, hey guys, thanks for checking out another episode of the Probate House Guy Podcast. I'm Brad Woodall, the Probate House Guy. Like I mentioned in some of the other episodes, if you are interested in getting in the world of probate, whether you're an agent or an investor, and you would like someone to handle your marketing for you because that whole thing just makes your head explode, we'll handle your marketing for you. So reach out to me at probatehouseguy.com to learn more. All right. Thanks again, guys. Stay tuned for the next episode.